4th in the draft. We'll try to get into some of that at the end of the show. But right now we have making his football playbook debut, Zack Pearson from Bear Report, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Good morning, Zack. How are you today, man?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, we got a lot of chat room people checked in, curious to get your thoughts on the Chicago Bears. I see the people out in the Long Lake, Minnesota. The ponds are frozen. Did we get those sub-freezing temperatures yet in Chicago?
No, not yet. It's been, I think the lowest it's gotten here so far is like 30-ish. Looking right now it's like 37. So
okay.
No, we actually avoided the snowstorm as well. I saw a lot of the country got a snowstorm this past week, but we got a little bit of rain, and that's about it.
Well, and I'm sure you got wind. I don't miss the wind.
Yes.
In the windy
Yeah.
city. It's always whipping through. Well, hey, appreciate you taking the time to make your football playbook debut here and talk a little Chicago Bears. We'll start off with the quarterback because I think he is the most polarizing, and that's a little bit of foreshadowing there, most polarizing player on the Chicago Bears roster. And I rewind 3 years ago to the Philadelphia situation when they had a young developing quarterback with the dangerous P word, which is potential. Justin Fields has a lot of it. But Ryan Poles, I know, has been making the rounds at every prominent college quarterback prospect. It seems like he's been in the Chicago. I think they have the number 2 pick currently, correct?
Yeah, I think it's number 3 because they're on the bye. So with the tiebreaker, the strength of schedule, they got pushed down to number 2. But I mean, yeah, you're right. Like going into the season, the biggest storyline was Justin Fields. And I don't think he was put in a good situation last year with, Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace just kind of being sitting ducks there. Now, thankfully, they drafted him because it's starting to kind of work out here in Chicago. But this year was going to be that year where it was like, okay, Justin Fields has to show something. He's got a new offensive coordinator, a guy that worked with Aaron Rodgers. He's got a new head coach, a GM that wants to build in the trenches. Now let's see what he can do. And from the start, they really didn't put him in a good situation. Like you see all these teams like the Eagles, they went out and got AJ Brown. They beefed up some key spots. The Bears pretty much did none of that. They didn't draft a wide receiver until the 3rd round. And it was a guy that a lot of people had as a day 3 pick. They didn't spend money in free agency. They didn't trade for anyone big out there except for Chase Claypool in the middle of the season. But no, so far it's been good for Justin Fields the past 6 to 7 weeks. First 4 weeks were kind of a struggle for him, but ever since Luke Getsy's kind of unlocked this offense, Fields has done a lot better. And I will say, a lot of people want to see him throw out of the pocket more. He did that against Green Bay. He threw the 2 interceptions, but he made some really good throws in that pocket. So I think the arrow is definitely trending upwards.
And I agree with you, Zach. I liked what I've seen in spurts. I think the flashes and the glimpses are there. He just has to be more consistent and put it together, and it takes time. I mean, it takes experience, right? And so I guess the big question is then, since Poles was kind of poking around these quarterbacks, has Justin Fields done enough to kind of satisfy his GM and head coach to want to go to war with him again next year?
I think so, yeah. I think the Bears are in a position where they potentially have the most important piece of a rebuild and the toughest piece to find in all of football. Finding a quarterback has haunted the Bears for decades now. I think they finally got it. And I think now that puts them in a position where, okay, they're picking 2 or 3, let's say come April. They're in a position where they could trade that for a ransom. Some team's going to want to come and get a quarterback. They could trade that pick, or they could end up with Will Anderson. They could end up with Jalen Carter at 2 or 3. And if they do trade it, someone like Miles Murphy might be there, let's say in the top 10. So I think they're in a good position. And I think, Fields has really done enough to show Poles, okay, don't spend that 1st round pick on a quarterback. Maybe take, like a day 3 flyer on a quarterback. I'm a person, I think I'm under the belief that every team should draft a quarterback no matter what. And if you're in the situation of the Eagles, you take one like late day 3, just as insurance. Yes. And I think Brock Purdy is a pretty good example right now of that. So I don't think they'll take one right away, like the 1st, 2nd, 3rd rounds, but I could see them taking like a project, late in the draft, maybe someone to back up Justin Fields.
Zack Pearson, beerreport.com, 24/7, subscribing to the Bill Walsh philosophy. You draft a quarterback every year. Yes, I am all about that. And the Eagles, believe it or not, tend to do that almost every single season. But you just said something that kind of resonated with me. The Chicago Bears have really not had stability at the quarterback position. I'm trying to go through the Rolodex in my head since Jim McMahon. Like, who has been Eric Kramer? Like, where has the stability quarterback come for the Chicago Bears? I can't even think of Jay Cutler. Was that the best guy that, the Bears have had?
Yeah.
Sexy Rexy.
Sexy Rexy. Mitch Trubisky had like a stretch of 3 to 4 games where we all thought he was the guy. And then even though they made the playoffs and lost the Eagles, I was like, he's not playing well these final 7-8 games. This is not a guarantee. But, man, we could go through probably like, I'm 33 years old. I could probably go through 28, 29 different quarterbacks that are just been
unbelievable.
It hasn't worked out. It's bad. Yeah, it's been bad here.
Well, and to your point, we're talking to Zack Pearson on Chicago Bears. Like, Fields can only do so much. He has literally like willed this team and this offense on his back and shouldered it all. You mentioned they traded for Chase Claypool at the trade deadline, and there was some hype with Mapletron coming out of Notre Dame, kind of had a pretty cool rookie season, and then suddenly fell off. And I was a little bit surprised at first that he was even available and on the block. I haven't heard much from him since he's been in Chi-Town. What have his contributions been?
Yeah, not much. His first game a couple weeks ago, I think he got 10 to 12 snaps. It's gone up since then. The targets really aren't there. Part of that was they had to start Trevor Siemian against the Jets, and that was just kind of a disaster all around. I think this is a year where it's just kind of a wash for Chase Claypool. They made the move because of this. You look at next year's free agency class, there is just really nothing out there unless some surprise cut happens or some guy that's on a trade block. There's just really no one out there. So I think Ryan Poles saw this as, okay, we'll take a second rounder, send it to Chase Claypool. This is a move for next year. The problem with that, though, is it's their second rounder. It's not the second rounder they got back the Roquan Smith trade from Baltimore. That second rounder is going to be, 33, 34, 35 in this draft. And that's a high pick. That's like an extra first round pick, essentially. Yeah. So if Chase Claypool doesn't produce next year, it's going to be a wash big time. It's going to be a loss. I'm sorry. It's going to be a loss for the Bears. I would give him next year because he is still on that rookie deal. But right now, he's got to get familiar with the playbook. He's got to get familiar with Justin Fields. And I think we're starting to see it trend upwards. Against Green Bay, before he got hurt and was kind of bothered by that injury the rest of the game, he was getting some targets. So we'll kind of see. I mean, for me, there's really no excuse for him not to get, 10 targets, 12 targets a game just because they don't have anyone right now. Darnell Mooney's hurt. They just have no one. They're throwing the Dante Pettis, N'Keal Harry, Byron Pringle. It's nothing against those guys, but those are wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 4 on a lot of other teams.
Now, there is something against those guys because they just ain't going to make the plays to get the W in the left-hand column. So yes. I hear – and, that top 40 pick, man, I didn't realize that because, wow, not only that, because he's going to be entering, like, the final year of his deal, right? So
yes.
they're going to have to make a decision and pay some big bucks. Wow, yep. Ryan Poles, man, he's learning on the fly. How old is that guy? He's like your age, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a little older. I want to say he's like late 30s. But he is kind of learning on the fly, and he's got guys around him. It's kind of interesting because he came from Kansas City, and everyone was like, okay, he's going to adapt the Kansas City model. And so far, it's too early to kind of tell. But he brought in Ian Cunningham from Philadelphia, who has been by his side. Every time I see one of them, the other one's right there next to him. It's pretty interesting. So I think they're both kind of picking things that they've learned from Philadelphia, picking things they've learned from Kansas City, kind of trying to make it into one and kind of build the roster like that. And I don't know if it'll work out. I can't say for sure, but if you're going to pick from two teams, I think that's two pretty good organizations to kind of model your franchise around.
Yeah, no doubt. Eagles have made playoffs for the last 5 years. So let me ask you about the head coach there. Is it Matt Eberflus? What do you make of it?
Yeah, he totally different than Matt Nagy. Nothing against Matt Nagy, but it was just with Matt Nagy, he wanted control of the offense. He would not give it up. He refused until they finally you got to give it up, dude. Essentially, he did that. He still had his hand in the offense, even though he named Bill Lazor the play caller. With Eberflus from day one, he came in and said, he was a defensive guy from Indianapolis. He goes, I don't want to call the defensive plays. I don't want to be the guy that's only focused on the defense. I want to be in all the meetings. I want to meet with safeties. I want to meet with wide receivers. I want to meet with offensive line, special teams. And he's been doing that. I think they've really bought into his hits principle. They've bought into him being a team guy. Like it's about the team first. It's not about any player. And you can kind of hear that in all these guys' press conferences. You'll ask Fields about, hey, you just broke an NFL record for most rushing yards in a regular season game. Oh, well, I didn't get the win. It's about the team. It's about us getting a win. And his philosophy is just kind of really shown in these players. And I think they kind of got a good, scrappy group of young guys, a good mix of veterans. And, I hate to say it, but I think a lot of people knew this year was going to be really tough on this franchise. They weren't expected to go to the playoffs. But he has not lost the locker room at all. They have 3 wins, and they're like, 1-6 or something like that in one possession games or something crazy like that. A lot of games they could have won, and a lot of games they beat themselves. And no one's really gone off. No one's really, blamed anyone else. So I think he's really done a good job early on. The wins aren't there yet, but I do think he's got the right plan in place.
No, I think it says a lot about the franchise and organization, especially when you deal off Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith midseason. And I was watching from a distance on the Twitterverse, but it looked like Roquan Smith was notified as he was doing some kind of press conference. The dude was like literally tearing up. And then the next day they shipped his ass out of there.
Yeah.
And that could really like lose a locker room. I mean, what was the reaction to the players inside the locker room when that went down?
Man, so I was at that press conference where Roquan Smith was crying, and I was like, oh man, like this is, Robert Quinn, he's a guy that a lot of people respect in that locker room. And he was here when the Bears thought in 2020, okay, we can make a playoff push. This year, a lot of people thought he was going to get traded before the season. So he meant a lot to a lot of these young guys in the locker room, being that leader. And then trading Roquan Smith, he was another guy. He was young, but he was also a leader. So it was a shocker in that locker room. I remember after Quinn and after Roquan, there was probably 3 or 4 open locker rooms we had in the next 2 weeks. And it was kind of all the talk was from the defensive side, at least, was, man, we lost a key piece of our defense. Man, we lost a veteran leader in Robert Quinn. Man, we lost a star at linebacker. So it definitely hit the locker room. At the same time, they know it's a business. I mean, they know, like, you got to pay the guys that you can trust, the guys that you're sold on. And in Robert Quinn's situation, he was an older veteran. It was probably for the best for him to go to a team that has a chance to make the Super Bowl, has a chance to win a Super Bowl. He just wasn't producing here. I'm shocked they even got the pick they got for him. I just didn't think anyone would.
Well, the Bears picked up, I think, $7 million of that.
They did, yes. So. That is very key in that as well. But then Roquan,
they purchased the draft pick.
They purchased the draft pick, yeah, which was actually is still a little shocking because it was like watching him here, Robert Quinn, like the first couple of weeks, it was just non-productive. I don't know if he just was kind of checked out. He doesn't seem like the type of guy that would check out on a team.
You know what, Zach? I'm going to stop you right there because that's exactly what it feels like in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Checked out. Since the day, from the moment he arrived, the body language, the whole demeanor, he came here. I don't want to say he was griping and grumbling, but he wasn't too happy because he wasn't going to have a bye week and he was going to be like the first guy to play 18 games. And like he comes in, he gets hurt, never made an impact. And now it's like he might be eligible to come back off the IR for the playoffs, but I'm not sure like he would even be on the Eagles playoff roster. So I was curious to kind of get your perspective on what he actually brings to the table.
Yeah, it's interesting because 2020, he had a bad year, man. He had a nagging foot injury. It's actually funny because like you watch, you look at his stats in 2020 in games they played in the dome on turf, he had all the sacks. And it was like 4 sacks. He didn't have a single sack in grass and outdoors, which was really interesting.
That's weird.
Yeah, and he was bothered by a foot injury too. The next year was his big year. 18.5 sacks, broke the Bears franchise record by Richard Dent. He was on fire, man. No Khalil Mack for like most of the season. But then in the offseason, he didn't show up to OTAs, missed the first part of mini camp, I want to say, was there for training camp, but was really never much of an impact in the regular season. So I can't say for sure if he checked out. He's kind of a guy that keeps to himself. He's very quiet. As you guys probably learned in the media sessions with him. I don't want to say he's checked out, but man, he's kind of a veteran getting the tail end of his career. So I didn't really realize he was doing kind of that bad in Philadelphia. I knew he got hurt. But I haven't really checked in on him yet.
Well, I mean, Zach, he was barely even playing 10 reps a game.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, and you would think too, like with all the talent, Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat and all these Hassan Reddick, you would think he would have just kind of fit right in and be a beautiful rotational piece, but it just wasn't there. And I think a lot of Eagles fans were just kind of scratching their heads like, what did we get here? I mean, I think the Bears hosed them on that one, which, hey, we'll see. But I don't know. If it was my call and he was healthy for the playoff roster, Zach, I'm being honest, I wouldn't even have him on it.
Okay. Wow. See, I didn't even realize it was that bad yet.
Yeah, he had brought really nothing to the table, and I will self-admittedly say I've been a lot harder on him than a lot of my co-hosts on this network, but I think it's very well warranted if you go and look at the numbers and the reps and the production, and it's just a great case study. Like, here's a guy that had the league by storm a year and a half ago, and just kind of was a shell of himself. But hey, I hope he gets healthy. I hope he gets right. I hope he is on the playoff roster and gets the chance to embrace the playoffs. But you would have thought a guy coming from the dumpster fire, no offense, of Chicago onto the best team in Philadelphia, you would have thought this guy would have been excited and rejuvenated and happy to be here. I didn't get that impression at all. So, it's been a little bit of a revenge tour here for the Philadelphia Eagles each week. And so this week is kind of a Robert Quinn's week, but he won't be active. He's on the IR. I see here, though, the Bears are running the ball 60% of the time, which is incredible in the year 2022, right? It's a passing league, and here the Bears are predominantly a run team. Was that a philosophy shift at some point here, or was that kind of the plan coming into the season? How did we get here?
A little bit of both. That was the plan, was to use both running backs in David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert. They drafted a kid out of Baylor, Tristan Ebner. Darrington Evans has been pretty good from Tennessee they picked up. But they did shift it because a lot of that's come from Justin Fields. And a lot of that started to shift in week 4 and 5 when he started taking off and running a lot more instead of throwing. That's where you get to 60%. Now, Montgomery's been a good back. Herbert's hurt. He won't be available for this game. Evans has played pretty well. He'll be the primary pass catcher out of the backfield. So they do kind of have a two-headed monster still. And with Fields, he's a guy, I mean, watching him every week, it's like, it's shades of Mike Vick, but almost better. It's very, it's crazy what he does. He's got like this spin move where he'll get trapped in the backfield. He makes one little spin move and he's gone. And he's got, I think, 3 50-plus yard touchdown runs. He's at 906 rushing yards on the season. He missed a game against the Jets, was banged up a couple times in this season, and is still like on pace to break the single season rushing record set by Lamar Jackson by a quarterback, which is crazy. So if you're watching this game, the Bears are going to come out. They're going to try to run the ball early. And if it doesn't work, don't be surprised that number is still, 160, 170 total yards rushing, because it'll be a lot of it be Justin Fields unless the Eagles can kind of contain him. Now, Atlanta did a pretty good job doing that. They had guys on the edge kind of spying him a little bit, maybe containing the edges. That's where he gets out. If he gets around that edge, he's gone. I mean, go back, watch the Green Bay game. There's a play in the first half, and this one is not on the edge, but it might have been. So he gets out. He just cooks 2 defensive backs. Like, they didn't even touch him, and they're within 4 feet of him. He is that fast. So I'd watch his running ability, watch how they use David Montgomery. I do think the Bears are going to try and run the ball in this game. However, I think the Eagles defense is the best they faced all season long. I mean, it's the number 1 ranked defense in the league for a reason. And I think if there's a team that can kind of shut down Fields, I think it's going to be Philadelphia. So that's how I'm kind of curious to see what they do, what the Eagles' game plan is for Fields, and what Luke Getsy's game plan is to kind of maybe try and exploit that defense. I think the Bears are going to have a tough time passing on the secondary.
Yeah, well, don't look now. The Eagles have bottled up Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry the last 2 weeks. So ever since they signed Linville Joseph and Ndamukong Suh a couple weeks ago, their run defense have kind of plugged that leakage. I will say Justin Fields, though, is an electrifying runner. There is no defense. That's one of those guys you can only hope to contain him.
Yeah.
He's that impressive. But I am a little bit concerned for the Bears because I don't know how they adapt and adjust against this Eagles defense. There's not too many talented playmakers. There's not a whole lot of instant offense that's going to rise. And I'm bummed out to hear about Khalil Herbert. He was one of my favorites coming out of the draft a couple years back, and that's unfortunate news. Last one here on the defensive side of the ball, Zach, since they traded away all their key players, like who are the guys that we should keep a lookout for that could make a play here on Sunday?
So this is gonna be a scary game for the Bears, and then they got Josh Allen the next week. So a scary 2 weeks here, but yeah, they have no one up front. They are among the worst defensive lines in football. They did not touch Aaron Rodgers once last week. They got 1 sack on Mike White the week before. Their leading sack guys right now are linebacker Jack Sanborn, undrafted free agent, safety Jaquan Brisker out of Penn State.
Wow.
And Roquan Smith, who doesn't even play for them anymore. Those are pretty much their 3 leading sack guys. So Sanborn's a guy to keep an eye on. He's played better. He was a free agent pickup out of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
He's kind of filled in really well for Roquan Smith. He's not elite like Roquan Smith. He's kind of like that old school, he's going to tackle you. It's very hard to break tackles out of Jack Sanborn. Jaquan Brisker should be back. He's a guy I'd pay attention to. Kyler Gordon's a guy who's going to be back from a concussion as their nickel. Jalen Johnson's their best corner. I think we're going to see him shadowing A.J. Brown. That'll be an interesting matchup to watch. For the most part, Jalen Johnson's been really damn good this year, and quarterbacks have avoided him. I don't know if you could avoid him because you have A.J. Brown, who is so good. So you're going to want to feed A.J. Brown. But Jalen Johnson's been pretty good. I mean, he had a good game against Christian Watson last week before they switched him off. He's gone up against Justin Jefferson. He's gone up against CeeDee Lamb. He's played some pretty good wide receivers. Those are the guys I'd really pay attention to. It's just I think the Eagles are going to have pretty much a field day. I don't know how you slow down Jalen Hurts. I don't know how you slow down that run game. Even if they slow down A.J. Brown, which I think is possible, nothing against A.J. Brown's game. I don't think he could – I mean, he very well could go, 150, a couple of touchdowns. It wouldn't shock me if he goes, a couple receptions, 75 yards, something like that. I would consider that shutting him down, which is crazy because he's just fantastic. I just don't know where the Bears are going to get the rest of the defense. The front seven's really their weakness, and I think that's where Philadelphia could kind of exploit. I would look secondary, Johnson, Jaquan Brisker, Kyler Gordon. Those are probably the guys I would look for. And they'll be without Eddie Jackson as well, so that's another big loss for them.
Yeah. No, good stuff out of you here. Zack Pearson, beerreport.com, 24/7 sports. And, that Jalen Johnson, he was a good-looking player coming out of Utah now. I saw him at the Senior Bowl. He's got some length and some great coverage ability. So you're right. That's going to be a good matchup between him and A.J. Brown.
It should be fun.
Yeah, for a little while, at least.
I mean, like I said, nothing against A.J. Brown. I think he's going to have a good day. And it just wouldn't shock me if I consider a bad day for him, like 75 yards, 70 yards, which is the Bears would take that from any wide receiver at this point. So,
well, it's funny because he had 70 yards this past week against the Giants with the touchdown, and we thought he did pretty good because Devonta Smith was in on the action, Miles Sanders, we were just giving away touchdowns. You get a touchdown, you get a touchdown. Hey, Zach in Chicago, you get a touchdown.
Yeah, I'll say this: I think I would be willing to bet that Devonta Smith will get a long touchdown in this game. I don't know who's going to guard him in that secondary, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, look out for Quez Watkins, too, in the slot. He just returned last week, and he took the top off the defense in week 2 in Minnesota. They don't always unveil that big play weapon. Like, they might keep that back. They might not need it against Chicago.
Yeah.
But he
Southern Miss, right? Quez Watkins?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, he was one of my – he was one of my guys I wanted the Bears to take a flyer on.
Zach, I like you, man. You've definitely grown on me here, and I've never met you before today, so I appreciate the time, and I'll definitely
no problem.
Be checking out the bearreport.com. Tell our listening audience at home all the great content you have on tap, where the Eagles can go and get all their intel for the upcoming Bears game this week.
Yeah, so we're going to be starting off a little bit today. Tomorrow we get to meet the players meet the media, so we'll have good stuff there. But you can just go to bearreport.com. You can follow Bear Report on Twitter, just Bear Report. We try to do our best to be fair to teams, unless they're Green Bay. Then we like to bash Green Bay, but we have nothing against Philadelphia. You guys got us in the playoffs. That damn Cody Parkey, man. But no, you guys are a good team, and I like watching the Eagles. I think the NFC East is going to be really fun to watch here. All the teams battling for those playoff spots. So, yeah, it should be a fun one Sunday. I'm hoping the Bears can just keep it close for at least a half and see how we measure up against, the NFL's best team right now, record-wise too. So, yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Anytime you want to do this, let me know.
Yeah, absolutely, Zach. We appreciate it. And I think our guy John McMullen is going to be out in Chicago, so maybe you can steer him in the right direction of a deep dish pie out there or something. But
hey, give him my info. I'll shoot him some good restaurants.
Okay.
No tourist stuff. I'll give him the good stuff.
All right, Zach. Appreciate it, my man. Let us know if you need anything come draft season. That's what we do.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. I definitely will. Thanks, guys.
Right. There you have it. Zack Pearson, bearreport.com. 24/7 Sports did a great job there. You can tell he's kind of a closet draft Nick, right? He got some nuggets over there. He had some good, useful information. Oceana, it's not time yet. We got one more commercial break, and I promise you, you'll get a chance to say goodbye to all the great listening audience out there, all over the universe, checking in from across the globe. It's a can't stop, won't stop situation. Oceana is still sick from school, home again here, and we're doing the Christmas countdown. We'll have that when we come back from the commercial break. Episode 71 here. Again, if you're just tuning in, rest in peace. Mike Leach passes away at the age of 61. When we come back, though, I still have a lot of notes to get into. I think we covered some injury reports in the first segment. We had our good friend Gail Saunders there in segment 2. Now, January 1st is the tailgate takeover. Okay, we're going down to Lot G and taking over the joint. So I want to see as many Football Playbook listeners down there. Drinks on me, okay? It's free 99. Drinks on the kid. Come thirsty. We're going to get some tomato pie and Bud Lights in, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it big. We're going to do it big Willie style, okay? Chris Strecker, 200 yards. And 3 touchdowns for Miles Sanders this week. Oh, baby. Buckle up. Ooh, yeah. I like that kind of party. Hey, Mint Diggity, Justin C., Joe Marucci, Tyler Bolich, everybody in the chat room. Appreciate the love and support. Do your boy a favor. Smash that like button. And when we come back, maybe we'll get into some of that NFL draft talk. I'm looking at the Tankathon.com standings that my guy JC just sent me. So let's take a look maybe at some of those potential draft targets for the Eagles. We'll touch base on that